Kia ora and good morning to the Economic Committee this morning on the 16th of June. Welcome everyone. I'd firstly like to explain that the meeting has been recorded and will be on the Council's website. The meeting is also being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. Just first off, want to explain the health and safety. As you'll see on the screen, we have got 2 emergency exits, so if we do have the unfortunate incident of an emergency, please go out the green exits. If we do, councillors, I'll just start that again. We have a defibrillator on this level, so we can use that too also if we need to. Also, if you are coming up to speak, can you please identify who you are for the recording so that those that are on the YouTube channel can hear who you are when you come up to this to present. First off, I will ask for apologies. The first one we have got today is the Mayor. Is there any other apologies today? No? Okay, I'd like to move the apologies, seconded by Councillor Denison. I'll ask you to vote. That has been passed, 16 votes. Thank you. I'll now call for any additional items. I don't know of any additional items. No? Okay, we'll move on. Any declarations of interest? Again, I don't know of any declarations of interest, but I'll just ask around the room. No? We'll move on to the next item. First off, we're going to do public comment. So we'll ask, we've got Amanda Lindsay and Rob Campbell up first off. And under public comment, understanding orders 2.22, I'm going to extend the public comment by 3 minutes, so as I can as the chair, so they will be speaking for 6 minutes. Thank you. You've got 3 minutes. There isn't a display here, but you've got it here, so we have got the light system there. Okay, so you've got 6 minutes. Thank you.
Can we get the mic on?
With me is Amanda Lindsley from Manawatu Chamber of Commerce. We're here in response to what has been a significant amount of feedback received from the members of both organisations in respect to the proposed changes in parking hours and charges in the CBD. Overwhelmingly, our members are expressing concern, both as to the changes themselves and the lack of consultation. I have extracts from a number of submissions made by our members, and I was going to read them, but we're short of time, so I'll just, summarise. There are concerns around, obviously, impact on customers. There are concerns around safety and security of staff having to park further away from their places of employment. There are concerns around the likes of churchgoers having to pay to attend church on Sunday. There are concerns around less than able-bodied people being able to access places in the CBD. These concerns are raised by a number of organisations, not just businesses, but also volunteer and community organisations. We've chosen these examples to highlight firstly the nature of the concerns, but also to highlight the range of people and organisations affected by this decision. It's not just a business issue. The CBD community is diverse, and as we all know, the CBD is better because of that. I have said, and I want to reiterate, that a common thread here is a real concern that Council has not engaged, has not sought to fully understand the needs of the range of users of the CBD. Palmy Bid is an organisation that represents the CBD community, and when I say that I mean the whole community. Those that live and travel to work here, those that invest and own businesses, those that provide community services, and those people who visit to enjoy the special area that is the heart of our city. At Bid, we know that the people who call the CBD home have real pride in their community and an absolute desire to contribute to its development. On behalf of that community, we call on Council to reflect, not to direct the community, to allow the community to be an active contributor in the development of our wonderful CBD. Car parking in the CBD is a complex issue that will require a comprehensive, multifaceted solution. It's not just about pricing or hours. Fundamentally, it's about the needs of those that use the CBD and those that call it home. On behalf of the community, we ask the Council pause the proposed changes and engage with the community to work on developing a comprehensive solution that recognises the diverse needs of all our people.
Thank you. My name is Amanda Lindsley. I'm the CEO of the Manawatu Chamber of Commerce and also on the committee for Palmy Bid. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak with you here today. Firstly, I'd like to support everything that Rob has said here this morning. It is disappointing that there's been no consultation with regards to this subject and what ostensibly is one of the most contentious issues for any city. Not only that, but council officers have relied on their own statement that businesses have been asking us to do more to encourage customers to visit, to reinforce this proposal, to increase parking hours within our city. This is not the same thing. We have spoken extensively with social groups, businesses, landlords within the city, and as yet not one of them has confirmed with us that they have been consulted or spoken with on this matter at all. And 99% do not agree with the extension to hours, and many detail incredibly good reasons, as you will have heard from Rob. We were going to read you some more, and we're quite happy to share those comments with you. We've had over 70 in writing in a couple of days. We understand that the Council is currently working on a parking strategy, which will look at all aspects of parking in the city and consider concerns raised by businesses and residents. Surely it would have been prudent to have completed this work with full, proper and transparent consultation, rather than slip this item through in one of the busiest times for Council during the LTP consultation. We understand this is about finance, that Council are looking to raise a further $500,000 through parking, but there could be other ways that we can achieve this, but you haven't consulted, so we haven't had the opportunity to discuss what those options could be. The following cities do not charge for parking on Sundays: New Plymouth, Dunedin, Tauranga, Taupo, Nelson, Hamilton, Napier. The list goes on, but we've only got 6 minutes. We are asking PNCC not to implement this decision in order for the strategy to be developed in partnership with Palmy Bid, the Manawatu Chamber of Commerce and your city centre businesses, social groups and your communities, and please to support your own vision of small city benefits, big city ambitions. There is a petition that has been going around, some of you will be aware of. We're aware that there's over 5,270 signatures on that. That's from outside of the business community. So we really are urging you, please, to have a rethink on this one. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob and Amanda. Just one question first off from me, then there's a couple of other questions in the queue. First off to you, David. Just on the question of consultation, was there any consultation from your end to businesses? I'm not sure who's going to answer the question.
There wasn't any consultation.
Okay, I just thought I'd ask it first because that was the question that was put back to us. Okay, starting off with you, Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your presentation, but I think my question is probably through you maybe to the CFO. Mm-hmm. As the presenters have mentioned, we've just been through our long-term plan process, and this is a budgetary decision or has implications for our budget. So I suppose my question to you, Stuart, is what would this mean if we paused the implementation of this decision in terms of the budgets that we're looking at for year one under the LTP, the 10-year plan?
Difficult question to answer because you haven't given us, I guess, a decision to do anything other than included in the LTP for now. So my advice for right now, as of today, would be to leave the LTP alone. It is a budget. It is making assumptions. I can't foresee what the outcome of any kind of pause looks like. So my advice would be that we don't do anything with the LTP, that we let the process flow as it should. I guess I guess the other part of your question is to say, well, what if you as council made a decision now that we're not going to make any parking changes at all for next year? Well, clearly that has some reasonably significant effects because, you know, in terms of how the LTP is structured, any revenue offsets expenditure, the expenditure still remains. The revenue needs to fill that gap. So either that's, well, ultimately the decision would be you would have to put the rates up to compensate for it. But we are very far through the piece. There's no decision process at the moment. My advice would be to leave it alone.
Thank you. So just to clarify my thinking on what you've just said. So if we went back to the paper that came through committee, that breakdown document expressed a number of assumptions that the budgetary implications were based on. So you're saying there are assumptions built in anyway. This is just another way of looking at that.
That's exactly what I'm saying, yes.
Right. Thank you.
Just if I could sort of jump in there, I mean, our suggestion is that you pause and allow a period for consultation, perhaps 2 or 3 months. What the financial implications of that consultation would be, I mean, we can't guess at this stage.
Yep. We're not saying that parts of this couldn't be developed, but what we're saying is we need to consult about it and find the best way to do it, not make it, just a carte blanche assumption without any consultation.
Can I just make a further comment about the consultation? So there is a series of resolutions passed in March by the Finance and Audit Committee.
We have seen those minutes as well.
Yeah, so those resolutions indicated which part of the fees and charges would be consulted on and which wouldn't. So those resolutions passed by council didn't include consultation for the changes to parking.
Yeah, we understand that, and that's what the major problem, really.
Amanda and Rob, do you want to just not speak until, and you might not need to speak, just if councillors have a question for you, then I'll get you to speak. Is that okay? I think the two-way conversation is quite hard at the moment. I'll just see if councillors have questions for you. Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, team. Although I have got answer to my question partly, but somehow the impression, at least to me, from the officers was that they have consulted the business owners, especially around the square or the CBD. Are you telling us that none of the business owners were consulted before making this decision?
We've extensively spoken to them, and we haven't been able to find one. We have over 70 emails within 2 days of asking for feedback direct about this, and nobody's come back and said that they've been consulted. And David's confirmed that himself that they didn't consult. And we also have your FAQ documentation here that says that they weren't consulted. Was there a consultation? No, there wasn't for these changes. And as David explained, they didn't actually have to at that stage. But yeah, no, there was no consultation.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Amanda and Rob. I just want to ask you if you know when parking charges were last increased in the CBD.
No, I'm not aware.
So it was 2015. So how often do you think it's reasonable to increase parking charges?
I don't think that's an issue that I have a particular view on. That's something that the community should decide in conjunction with council.
And we're not necessarily saying there shouldn't be parking charges increases. We're not saying that. We're just saying we haven't had a chance to consult and talk about it. So that could be a very valid question that you're asking, but without consultation and with them, you're disseminating one very small part of the whole thing. If we've got a parking strategy coming up, surely we can put all of those things into it and come up with something that's comprehensive, that works for all of the communities and also provides finance for council. We understand council can't run on spell of an oily rag. So, yeah, we do understand that side of it as well.
And so you've given us examples of other cities that don't charge for parking on Sunday. Have you had a look at what other cities charge for parking per hour?
Yep, most of them do charge more than Palmy. They don't charge after 6. The very latest, I'm talking outside of the Wellington, Auckland, but most of them do not charge on weekdays past 6 o'clock. Many of them stop at 4 o'clock. They do some on Saturday, and they don't do any on Sunday, but they do charge more from anything from sort of $2 to $4 an hour for parking.
Thank you.
Back to what I said before, it's not necessarily about cost.
Okay, we've got to get through these questions quicker because I've got a group that's got to leave. So, Councillor Barrett, quick question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a couple, and I will try to be concise. You mentioned that if this went through, that staff would have to park further away. Can you just tell us why that is?
It was feedback for one particular business, and because they wouldn't be able to afford the cost of parking, they'd park further away in free car parks or less costly car parks. And,
So-
and the implication was that there would be security issues for them having to walk in the evening to and from their car parks.
So from that, we would take that free car parking is sort of part of their business model?
No, I think we could take that the business owner was concerned about the security of her staff.
Thanks. That was, I guess, my second question was really around understanding the extent of obligation on an employer under health and safety legislation in terms of, obviously on the premises, but how does it relate to the commute?
Well, I think the implication is that wherever this particular business owner's staff receive an injury, she feels responsible for them and wants to make sure that they're protected on their way to work and on their way home. Whether that's a strict legal responsibility or just a moral responsibility, I applaud her for it.
Thanks. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is does either the bid or the chamber have an understanding of what the legal obligation is on an employer around health and safety as it relates to the commute?
That would be under duty of care.
Thank you. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hancock, have you got a quick question?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Amanda and Rob. You mentioned before about the council wanting to make up 500,000 shortfall. Is there anything in consultation we should use that as a means to actually try and sort of bridge that gap? Is there anything that is top of mind for you in terms of how that could be compromised?
No, again, I think we come here with open minds about a solution and we'd just like to discuss it and consult. There may well be other ways to bridge that gap.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Councillor Dennison, very quick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to inquire around the feeling around the businesses, whether there's a difference between the increase in the charges versus the increase to the days and hours. If it was just the increase to the rates and with no change to the hours and days, do you think there'd be a level of acceptance that would be without the need to go out for consultation? Would that be?
No, we do. We need to go out to consultation. The sort of the gut feel, and we're quite happy to share the feedback that we've got from a concise version of the 70 so far responses, more from landlords who are representing multiple people. They're more concerned about the hours than the money. But we haven't even talked about what that could look like. But like Rob said, that there are. That's a conversation we need to have. What could that look like? But and as part of the whole parking strategy, where people can park and all those sort of things. But the biggest concern that was coming out was the extended hours, for sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
I have got two more people in the queue, but I am going to stop it there. We have next week at Finance and Performance got the petition coming to that. So it will be continued next week. So Councillor Beattie has got that group coming to her committee. So this conversation will continue next week at her committee. So I'm sorry for the two that are in the queue, but we will continue this conversation next week. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you all.
The conversation will continue. Thank you. I'd just like to move the public comment, seconded by Councillor Dennison. If we could please vote on that. through. Has everyone voted? Okay, that's passed, 16 votes through. I'd now like to move to the next item, which is an item from the factory. And today we have got Dave Craig, Mike Creed, and Steve Bennett coming forward. So Dave, could you just explain exactly what's going to happen? Thank you. Sure. The reason we're on a time pressure is that Dave's got a board meeting at 9:45.
Yeah, so thank you for having us in. Dave Craig from the factory. Next to me, Stephen Bentley from Roller Blaster, and Mike Creed from Morrison Creed. Some fresh new faces around the table, so it's good to see. I thought it would give us a good opportunity just to quickly give you guys an update of what the factory does. Hopefully most people know. If not, I'll go through that quickly. But rather than the standard 9-minute talk I thought what we'd do is have a little fireside chat and bring Stephen Bentley in and show his path through our programs up at the factory to show the power of what a bubbling ecosystem here for entrepreneurs does in the Manawatu. So we'll get on to that. You guys all know factory's all about people. We really look for founders, entrepreneurs that have that X factor. We've been around since 2003, so a long, long time. We've got two things that our trust board not forces us to do, but encourages us to do. One is to stimulate and build an entrepreneurial highway ecosystem, what we call it, and then fund high-growth, high-value startup companies. So those companies have novel intellectual property that we try to protect, and then wrap a solid business model around that, and then find some investment from our angel group, and then angel groups across the country. We started in 2003 operating here just in Palmerston North, and we've grown over the last 18 years nationally and internationally. The one thing that I want to say, and it's up there in an underline simply because our HQ is here in the Manawatu, and we're really proud of that. Over the course of the last 14 months, our team's been deciding on how we operate. Like I said before, we're really people-focused, and our people that power our team are people-focused. And so we've got 4 clear values. They're a little bit different than most business values, but that's because we're a little bit different than most businesses. So our first is to cultivate raving fans. So we don't like to talk about ourselves. We allow our customer to do that for us. The second is there's no box. Everyone says, let's be creative and think outside the box. We don't have a box. We just got a big old blue sky. We like crazy. You've heard me say that, crazy people with crazy ideas. And then our team, we do life together. So as Steve will get to, we actually jump in the trench with him, go on his journey with him, roll our sleeves up, and do work with him. So we do life together. Our programs start in high school, so young enterprise, straight through to where Mike sits in the MIG Angel seat. We run an Ag Tech Hackathon powered by Microsoft every year. We have our 10-year anniversary of our big flagship program, Innovate. We've branched out to Wanganui, Hawke's Bay, and Kapiti with that program this year. Callahan Funded Support and Growth, that's our founder incubator program, and then the MIG Angels. And then below that, Sprout. So we spun Sprout out, which is our Ag Accelerator program that runs its own business line now. The last 4 years, busy. Over 1,400 startups. Those are broken down through a triage process that we have. About 80 companies support over 30 mil of investment. That's the local dollars going into those companies. NPS score of 61, which is very high. And then the likes of our Innovate program, lots of events going on. What we try and do is drive activity to bring those, what we call Entrepreneur Underground, out and about. And so I thought, rather than continue talking, we'd show an example. Roller Blaster's journey from where he started with a crazy idea, a crazy guy. I think Steve had be all right with me saying that, and then through the pathway. So he came through Innovate and then graduated into our support and growth program. And then about 5 years later, started taking investment. So I'll pass it over to Steve.
Morning, councillors, Madam Chair. Thanks for receiving me. Like Dave says, I probably ticked the little bit crazy box. So about 17 years ago, I bought a fire-damaged house with my wife. It was our first house, and we had this bit of a crazy vision that all these walls would be a colour, all those walls would be white, and of course the ceiling paint's different to the door paint. And we're doing it room by room, and I found what I'd do is I'd spend 5 minutes rolling, and then I'd spend about 20 to 30 minutes trying to clean the roller sleeves, and it drove me absolutely nuts, right? We can all relate to this. One day I was in the laundry sink cleaning the sleeves again, and I looked outside, I saw the water blaster. I thought, well, it's got to work, right? So I held my roller sleeve up, I hit it with the water blaster, and as you can imagine, right, paint everywhere, over me, the house, the ground, everywhere. But the roller was perfect. I mean, it was crystal clean, it was brand new looking, it was ready to go again. And that sparked the idea. That was right at the beginning. And there were a bunch of hurdles to deal with. You know, how do you hold the handles? How do you contain all that mess? All of this. And the idea sort of festered in my head for probably about 8 years. And it wasn't until I heard the advertising on the radio for Innovate that I thought, well, I'll give it a go, right? This is the only way I'd actually come across that, hey, I might be able to have a go at this idea. And so I entered Innovate in 2012, got to the top 30, but didn't quite go any further. I went back to the garage and I built a prototype. I re-entered again in 2014, and I think out of 260 odd inventors that year, I got to the top 5. And that was the beginning. And as you see now, you know, we have a polished product. It's cleaning sleeves in 30 seconds. Instead of 50 to 100 litres of water going down the drain, we're only using 2 litres of water. There's no mess, and it's fully contained. And that is really my journey. Do you want to?
Yeah, so the executive director, Tony McMurtry, who's also one of our MIG members, executive director of Roller Blasters up in Auckland, and so he apologizes for not being here. He really wanted to kind of talk about his story with Stephen and the roller cleaner. But what we thought we'd do is bring Mike in, because Mike sits around our programs. Not only is the director of Morrison Creed here in town, he's one of our MIG members. He's been a mentor for various years. He's been a judge for Innovate Young Enterprise. I like to refer to Mike as just a good dude, right? He's one of those all-around guys that if you need some help, you give a ring, and Mike's on the end of the line. So, Mike.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name's Mike Creed from Morrison Creed. So, why do we invest and support Innovate in the factory? Well, we are business advisors and chartered accountants, so we're passionate about business. And that allows us to give back to this business community. So we want to see this region grow and develop, and by supporting young and emerging businesses, we're looking after the future. You know, we want this region to be recognised as supporting, encouraging and developing start-up business so we attract the right talent to the region. The factory also has a great network of advisors, and I mean, say any business, you know, start-up and that can go and talk to Dave and he can point them in the right direction and someone can start talking to them. So that's a huge bonus to just have that available to everyone that goes through that factory. Personally, I'm involved with MIG. Why would I do that? Obviously, I'd like a return on the investment, but it's a known fact that only 1, maybe 2 in every 10 that you invest in succeed. But it's a way of supporting new business. It's funding, it's coaching, it's guidance. It presents opportunities in markets that they might not obviously see. It's a way to introduce new connections. It's great for the region if we can have a global company come out of this region. It's just astronomical, and I think there's one on the way. You also invest in a number of businesses, so while you're investing in startups, you're diversifying in the range of businesses that you're doing, whether it's tech or or whatever. So you're diversifying there. So you put a smaller amount in, say, 10 businesses and gives them all an opportunity. As an investor, hopefully 1 or 2 of them come off. If I wasn't investing in MIG, what would I be investing in? I'd probably continue to invest in property and more established businesses, but in my mind, that's not looking after the future. So we want emerging businesses to come through to keep that cycle going. And there's loads of talent out there. A lot of them just don't get the opportunity.
I think that's it.
You
Question?
happy to take some questions?
Absolutely.
Can I ask the first question? So, Steve, how much money did you put into your product? If you don't mind, you.
Me personally?
Yeah.
Probably I've put in about $30,000 myself, and countless hours of sweat equity.
So, how many units have you produced to date?
To date, we've done 2 runs. The first run of 25, which was to really see what happens to the machine once it's in market. We just had our 80 run, which arrived in late February, and I think we've got 12 units left of that.
Wonderful.
So that's about where we're at.
So, what markets do you distribute to?
At the moment, we focus on commercial painters. It's not really a DIY product. It's $1,800 retail. And we're in talks with potential distributors as we speak. So our job now is to look at scaling up this and getting it into the States.
Cool. I've got a question from Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 2 questions. First is it only the water that this machine is using to clean the roller, or any other chemicals are required?
Thank you. No, it's just water and high pressure.
And it can clean any kind of paint, not only the water-based?
Only for water-based paints. Oil-based paints are getting phased out, and I think maybe a couple of % of paint left that are oil-based that people are still using. In places like California, they've banned it completely, so we're aiming at water-based paints.
And have you done the analysis of a single cleanup? How much it costs to clean 1 roller?
Using this machine?
Yes.
Actually, I'll give you 2 analyses on that. So if you clean it by hand, you will use 50 to 100 litres of water, and it'll take on average 10 to 15 minutes. So there's quite a labour cost involved in that. If you clean it using this, you'll use probably 4 cents a power, and labour cost maybe $1 if you're lucky, because it's only 30 to 40 seconds.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, and thank you, the 3 of you, for coming through. It was a really great idea to bring an example into the chamber. So thank you very much for doing that, and great to see you, Mike, as somebody from MIG, because we actually haven't seen somebody come through. So we do really appreciate all 3 of you coming in.
Thanks for accommodating us too. Apologies, we got to run.
Yeah, no, have a good board meeting.
Cheers, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. I'd like to move this, seconded by... Is there any comments? No comments, we'll go to vote. Right, if we could look to the minutes. Oh, sorry, that passed 16 votes through. If we could look to the minutes, which is on page 9. Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Meehan. No matters arising from the minutes. So we'll look to vote on those. Right, that's passed. 15 votes for and 1 abstention. Right, moving on to the next item, which is item number 7 on page 17. Thank you. Thought it was going to be presented by Julie, but presented by Peter.
Yes, kia ora koutou councillors. Julie apologises, she's just got urgent work to finalise the plans and the strategies for the long-term plan. There isn't any presentation on the profile itself, so just happy to
Take questions.
answer any questions.
Okay. So, does anyone have any questions on this? Oh, Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Peter, for standing in. And really good to see it's on page 30 of our order papers, which looks like page 12 of the analysis, some information about the new business side of things and the survival rate of new businesses coming through. And just wondered, I guess, about the information that actually underlies that. How much information do we have about not just, I guess, new businesses, but the ages of various businesses and sort of how long businesses are surviving before they're either acquired, shut down, et cetera, so that we can sort of see an overall pattern, perhaps?
It would be possible to purchase that data. We thought the sort of a 3-year survival rate, well, it was actually something, an idea that came up from a councillor in the last 10-year plan when we were looking at monitoring. Sometimes structural changes in a company can result in a change from one company to another. So it isn't, the data's not perfect in terms of what it shows you in terms of, you know, was the company sold to someone else or did they restructure it into a new company?
Cool, thank you. I think the second question that I have is just around manufacturing economy in general. It seems like if we were going to see an emerging sort of circular economy, we might pick it up here. The reference in terms of definitions was around raw materials, and I'm just wondering, is there any way that we can get a lens on this that tells us about how much of this, if any, is sort of reusing materials or using things that we might think of in more of a circular economy context rather than linear?
But that would be counted as manufacturing because, you know, essentially when you recycle a metal product, it gets melted down and the constituent metals separated out and then turned back into a new product. But you know, New Zealand has been quite dependent on imported componentry in a lot of areas, yeah, because we just don't have the scale to produce all of those items here.
Okay, so just trying to clarify then, is there anything in the underlying data that would be available that could help us understand how much of the manufacturing activity that occurs here is around reuse of materials versus use of raw materials?
No.
It's not. Okay, great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. There's no further questions. Thank you, Peter. So I'll look to move this recommendation, seconded by Councillor Hancock. Any comment on this? Just want to say thank you to the officers for putting this forward. It's another good example of putting these statements forward for what we've got in our sectors. So thank you very much for the work that you've done on this. Okay, we'll look to vote. That's passed 16 votes. And we'll go to the next item, which is on page 39, which is you, Peter. So some of this material we've seen already, so just go through the highlights of probably what we haven't seen.
Oh, okay. I normally do a presentation. Did you want to do that? Or
Yep,
you don't?
yep.
So there is a PowerPoint
We've just
file.
seen some of it through the Chief Executive puts some of the highlights through to us sometimes. I don't know if you know that. Did David talk to you about that? Yeah, okay. Yep, just go through your normal presentation.
So a quick look at the latest GDP data. It's a pretty strong economic recovery underway. You may remember last year, Infometrics estimated that GDP in the city declined by 1.2% in the September quarter. They've now revised that to an increase of 3.1%. December growth has been revised up to 0.8% and now estimating growth of 2.7% in the March quarter. So, yeah, quite a and much stronger recovery than for the national data. For the employment data, just a reminder, this is only for people resident in Palmerston North. It isn't possible to get the data for the total workforce here. They have attempted to estimate that data, but the numbers suggested jobs in the city declined by over 2,500 people last year, so they're having a real problem getting that tax record data down to workplace. So nearly 34,000 people were employed, which was a 0.4% increase from a year ago, whereas the total jobs in New Zealand were down 0.7%. And nearly $2 billion worth of salaries paid to residents, which was up 3.7%. We're seeing job seeker numbers coming down, but it has slowed quite a bit. And one of the things that is contributing to this is the number of people on the health condition and disability component of the benefit. So the job seeker benefit was combined in 2013, the unemployment benefit and the sickness benefit were brought together. And nationally and locally, we've seen quite strong growth in the number of people with health conditions or disabilities, which means on a short-term basis, they're not available for work. There's been quite a bit of talk about mental health issues, but this is the breakdown up to March. It's actually really strong growth across all those categories, even people with accidents, and a range of health conditions. And so I'm not sure why that's grown so strongly, but the national data is showing just a similar rate of growth, whether it's possibly that people with health issues are finding it harder to find employment, I'm not sure, but that's certainly slowing that growth in the number of people coming off the job seeker benefit. There's still about 550 people more on the benefit than a year ago, but the numbers have come down by over 400 since Christmas. I wanted to include this graph this time. I haven't included an update to the list of major construction projects because up until last week there wasn't much change. The most recent change is the Otaki to north of Levin Road. The cost estimates for that is now increased from about 800 million to 1.5 billion. So that's become quite a big project for the region. But what the Building and Construction ITO has been doing some work to take that data. They're also trying to include all the small projects in the region and actually map that out on an annual basis to see the workflow over the next 15 years and the skills that are going to be required for that increase in work over the next 15 years. And they had a workshop with people from the construction industry last month, and one of the key issues companies were talking about was they just can't keep up with demand. Companies have taken on apprentices, but there's a limit to how many apprentices they can take on because they've got to keep that appropriate balance between skilled staff and apprentices. So there is growth happening in the industry, but at the moment the amount of building work taking place is actually being constrained by the lack of labour. And if the black line is the growth in building consents in New Zealand, and so that has been increasing quite steadily since 2012, whereas the growth for this region has been much shorter, and over a 4-year period, we've had almost the same rate of growth. And so that's one of the principal things actually holding projects back at the moment. Residential building consents peaked at 563 in the year to April. We will see a drop-off because last year in June we approved 114 consents in 1 month, and so we're not likely to reflect that. That was because we had Soho, Papeoea and Bupa all sort of falling in 1 month. So we will see a bit of a drop-off. And it is primarily a labour issue rather than a land issue that is just constraining that growth. But the industry is working quite hard to address it. One thing I forgot to mention with the previous graph was I was expecting we would see a bit of a drop-off in the value after May, because in May last year we approved consents worth $91 million in 1 month, and the previous record was 48. We've actually approved $86 million in May this year. So it's just amazing to see the amount of work coming through. The latest CoreLogic data for May, Palmerston had a 3.8% increase in house prices from April to May. They're talking about a slowdown nationally because I think it had slowed down to 2.2% growth in 1 month, but it's just still really critical in terms of what's happening in house prices nationally and locally. The retail data, because of the impact of the COVID restrictions last year, if you report annual change, the graphs are showing hundreds of % change. So MB has started producing this data showing a 2-year rate of change, and Palmerston North has been consistently ahead of the national picture for all of that time, even prior to COVID. That spike in April this year is actually because Easter and Anzac Day fell in the same week in 2019, and so had quite a big impact on spending in 1 week. And the gap in international visitor spending has been even more pronounced between the national trend and the city, and a lot of that's because much more of our tourism is visiting friends related. People stay for longer. They did stay under COVID, and with the border opening with Australia, we're actually already seeing growth in spending, and that's growth in spending is higher than what we were seeing in 2019. So it's been interesting or encouraging to see how quickly that's recovered. The breakdown of spending within the city, the red line is the outer CBD, and that's where a lot of our retail investment has been going. So that's been quite strong for a period of time. And the blue line is the inner CBD growth. So really strong growth, the close to 10% at times, and a little bit of a slowdown in April, but I think May will be quite strong. And just finally, the latest commercial property market survey, a very encouraging drop in vacancies over 2.5 years from June 2018 to June 2020. If you look at the latest Reserve Bank monetary policy statement, had vacancy data for Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch. Vacancy rates were much higher there. And so those low vacancy rates are going to be a catalyst for significant commercial investment, particularly in the CBD where those vacancy rates have come down quite sharply. And for a while there was concern about the amount of office space being built down Broadway and whether that was undermining the CBD, but we've actually seen that investment was necessary. Just the outlook, construction's going to be really continuing to drive it, as well as exports. Agricultural prices are very strong. A disappointment this year has been the very small funding increase Mid-Central received compared with other DHBs that had one of the smallest increases in annual funding, and that seems to be an ongoing problem with the population data and the projections and the estimates for the region. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Peter. Great presentation. We'll start off with the Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you, Peter. I've got a couple of questions. First up, with your slide on the annual value of consents, there's two quite significant increases over the years, and I was just trying to work out the dates, but it looks like it's approximately 2018 and then 2020. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, with 2020, I think you kind of explained, we saw the big investment with Countdown Distribution Centre and obviously the shovel-ready projects and those sorts of things. Is there anything significant that triggers the local spike in 2018? Because there's quite a steady increase for the country, but there's quite a significant increase just there specifically.
The two of the bigger investments there were Toyota and Food HQ. Food HQ was the biggest of the investments there. There were some other investments. So that first quarter or first half of 2018 was very strong.
Okay, thank you.
And I had expected, as I said, this year to fall off, but just last month we had another 86 million.
Sure, okay, thanks. And then my next question, I just want to confirm, I heard you say that with new residential dwellings, labour is more of the issue, labour availability rather than land availability.
Yes,
Yep, okay, thank you. And then just my final question is probably...
Sorry, and it's also the fact that we've had that commercial construction lifting at the same time as residential. So it's just it's a real capacity thing for the sector.
Thank you. And then just my final question is probably a little bit more general. The reporting on the wages continue to increase, and so does employment. And I wondered if you had seen any correlation to the significant minimum wage increases that we've seen, because a lot of the opposition rhetoric that we hear is that this will create unemployment or, it's not affordable. But there hasn't seemed to be any correlation to a decrease in employment over the last couple of years where we have seen quite significant minimum wage increases?
No, but we've had such strong economic growth here, it would be difficult to separate out individual factors.
Thank you.
Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Peter, for your presentation. Peter, looking at statistics, the industrial vacancies are very minimal. Do you think that will impact our investment or current businesses wanting to expand?
What we're seeing is, say, Countdown's building a new distribution centre, it doesn't take long for someone else to take over their space. And so a lot of our growth is occurring, companies are building a bigger site and then someone moves into, there's a progression as companies grow through sites.
So as they move, their space becomes available, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've seen that with the old foodstuffs site and Kaumarawa, that's filled now with other companies that have taken over that space.
So you think there's enough land out, because I see the North Industrial, there's no vacancies there.
No, so this is building vacancies rather than land.
That's what I mean. Yeah. So it's just that if there's nothing available, does it impact where people want to go?
I'm not sure,
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, just on that, we are about to commence a piece of work to investigate an further extension to the North East Industrial Zone. And as part of the work at Kakatangiata with the housing development, we're also looking at how there may be opportunities for further industrial land at Longburn. So there's work in the pipeline to provide further land for industrial.
Councillor Tennyson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in regards to one of your latest slides, which had percentages on different sectors, can I just get a deeper interpretation of the local business where it goes in 2020 into the 0%? So what has created that, and is that something we should be aware of or to influence more of?
The largest bit of that would be Terrace End. And there was already very little vacancy there apart from, it looks like a building, sort of upper floor development that has been filled.
Yep. So is that limiting other, like the same question around not having space and for further growth with local business, is that something that we should be considering more zoning for? Just to help me interpret.
I think I don't think it's lack of land opportunities. It just requires investors to either upgrade building stock, in those areas where there are vacancies, or to invest in new buildings. Yeah, and there's a lot of. That's why the consents team is so busy. There's a lot of consents coming through. There's a $6 million project currently for Rangatiki Street.
Thank you, Chair.
Did you want to comment?
I was just going to say, certainly as part of the major residential growth projects that we're working on at the moment, Kaka, Tangiata and Akotiri, there is work, quite detailed work occurring as part of those as to what sort of local business needs are required as part of those. The other thing which surprised me a little bit with that figure is I know the shopping centre down Milson Line, which Eileen Fair built, is in the local business zone. And I know there's vacancies in that, and there has been vacancies for quite a period of time. So it might just be in the rounding, but that's something to think about as well. But there is certainly still occupants, available space in that building, for instance.
Thank you, Peter. That's all the questions. So we'll look to move the recommendations. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Bowen. Great, we'll move into comment. I'd just like to firstly say it's great to see some sectors over the last few months have definitely picked up, particularly in the areas of tourism. And they have really picked up in the sector, and you can see that from the figures, and retail have definitely done very well. You can see that from these figures as well. And it's good to see that because the proof's in the pudding. No more comments, so we'll go to vote. That's passed. 16 votes. The next item is the portfolio update, which has basically just been put there for your information. I'll just take it as been read. Is there any comments that anyone would like to make on that document? Councillor Johnson.
Just a question, I'm not sure who it's to, might be you. Under issues summary, there's a comment about holding markets at the arena. Can you expand on that? What's that about? What are the issues?
I'm not sure who could answer this because the person who holds the arena portfolio isn't here.
But you've raised it as an issue, presumably. Did that come from you?
Yeah. Yep, I will raise it. So it's around, we thought that the fee that was going to be offered was going to be reasonable, and now it's going to be at market rates. So it's going to be quite hard for the storeholders to actually go into arena. So it's going to be quite an issue to get the markets at arena. So that's an issue. So
Okay.
I don't know what to do about that. So that's why it's been put as an issue in the portfolio update. It was basically when it was first discussed with the arena manager, it wasn't going to be an issue, and now it's been raised as an issue.
Okay. So that's by stall holders that the cost is prohibitive for them?
It wasn't going to be prohibitive, now it's been put as a prohibitive cost.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you for clarifying.
Thank you for bringing it up. Any other questions from anybody? Okay, we'll look to move a report. Moved by Councillor Hancock, seconded by Councillor Dennison. We'll look to vote. Oh, first off, is there any comments on the report? No? We'll look to vote. That's passed with 16 votes, and we've finally got the work schedule, which is on page 66. Anything you'd like to say on the work schedule?
No, nothing to add.
Okay, we'll look to put the work schedule by Councillor Barrett, seconded by Councillor Bowen. No comments? No, so we'll look to vote. Thank you, that's passed with 16 votes. Thank you, everyone. That's the finish of the the Economic Development meeting today. Thank you for your attendance. There are no workshops today, so that is